This is a special update with Rick Joyner and Lieutenant General Retired W.G. Jerry Boykin.
Well, we've been having quite a conversation with General Boykin. Now, you grew up in Delta Force, your military career. You were commander of Delta Force, and you were also commanded in some of its, I think, most courageous battles ever. I know that Black Hawk Down, the one made famous by Black Hawk Down, has been called possibly the most courageous battle in U.S. military history. You were in Grenada, you were in Panama. Noriega surrendered to you. Right. But you have been around men of courage, you've seen courage, you've had to have courage to do your job. Do you see courage in America today? Where do you see courage?
There's two types of courage. There's physical courage and there's moral courage. The great general of World War II, Patton, actually said that moral courage was the most needed and the least present quality in men. Moral courage. I see physical courage is still being demonstrated on the battlefields in Afghanistan even today. I see physical courage. What I don't see is moral courage. The most morally courageous people in America should be the spiritual leaders, and even the average Christian should be the most morally courageous people. Because of the atmosphere of political correctness, because of the leftist leanings of the media, you see, I think, a lack of moral courage today because people are afraid they're going to get criticized, they're going to get beat up by the media, metaphorically. And we're not seeing the moral courage coming out of the church today that I think should be. And what you're seeing, the converse is, what you're seeing is you're seeing so many spiritual leaders now, well-known people, that have moved away from a biblical worldview, that have moved to a compromised position on very important issues. And they do it under the guise of, well, God has revealed to me. And you know what? I think what God has revealed is you're a false prophet when you say that.
When you compromise like that.
When you compromise on these fundamental issues. And what you see in the church then is the parishioner, when they don't see the courage from the pastor, the parishioner is very much less inclined to demonstrate courage on their own.
And the congressman is less inclined. Like that one told me, he said, if we saw more, you would see more courage in Washington if we saw more courage in the church. Yeah.
Now, courage, it's very important for people to understand that courage is not the absence of fear. Right over here in Charlotte, you've got two boys called the Benham brothers. They're twins. And if you remember, the Benham brothers were the guys that had this home and garden TV network contract. They flip houses. They were Liberty University graduates. They've made a lot of money, and Home and Garden TV was going to give them their own program, and then they discovered that somewhere along the line they'd made a statement about their support of biblical natural marriage and their lack of support for same-sex marriage. They canceled their contract and hammered them. And you ask them, they will tell you their first instinct was fear. Oh my gosh, what is going to happen? They were afraid. That is a natural instinct. Look, I got over 500 parachute jumps, I can tell you. Your instinct, the natural instinct is fear. Yeah. But courage is about overcoming that fear and not letting that fear dominate you and control you. Patton also said, and I like reading things from Patton, but Patton also said that courage is fear that held on 1 minute more.
Yeah. That's great.
And another great warrior said, courage is being the only one on the battlefield that doesn't know you're scared. It's talking about that. We all feel fear.
Yeah, it's who's going to be your Lord? Is fear going to be your Lord? Or are you going to do what is right and follow the Lamb?
Now, what needs to happen is parishioners in the church today need to go find a church, first of all, where they've got a pastor that demonstrates courage, where he'll talk about these social issues, where he'll take a biblical stand on things and not compromise. They need to go find those. And if your church is not like that, you need to go find a church where the pastor has courage.
Yeah.
Because when the pastor has courage, it's infectious. Then the parishioners have. The second thing is you need to quit focusing on sitting on the pew of the church and waiting for the rapture. That's not what God called us to do. Our reward is heaven, but that's not why we were saved and why we were redeemed. We were redeemed to be warriors in God's kingdom and to demonstrate our courage by putting our faith into action and overcoming the instinctual fear that everybody has, even Christians. And recognizing that God's called us to be warriors in His kingdom. The third thing is we've got to get involved. We've got to be active. We can't just rely on the pastor and say, well, my church supports this, or my church, well, what are you doing? What are you as an individual doing? First of all, are you registered to vote? Secondly, did you vote? Thirdly, are you in behind the candidate? Fourthly, are you out taking a stand against the evil that's being perpetuated in your community? If your city council passes a SOGI bill, a sexual orientation, gender identity bill, saying that if a man feels like a woman today, he can go in the women's bathroom. Let me tell you, a man better not walk in the bathroom where my granddaughters are. That's going to be a
They tried to do that here in Charlotte.
Well, absolutely.
Our Oak Initiative people swarmed downtown.
And
I was going to
what
dress
I-
up Al Wood as a woman, saying, do you
Yeah,
want this guy coming
yeah.
into your daughter's
Holy
bathroom?
mackerel. But look, that's a lack of courage. That we let that kind of thing happen because Christians are sitting back afraid to get involved because they don't see the courage among the pastors. And I'm saying you can stop that kind of stuff. You just talked about how you stopped it right here in Charlotte. You can stop that kind of stuff, but you've got to
get engaged.
You've got to get beyond the fear, the instinctive fear, and you got to put your faith into action. You got to say, I'm going to do this. God's called me to do it.
One key to overcoming fear. If we would have the pure and holy fear of the Lord, we don't have to fear anything else or anyone else. If we're serving God, and you know that's one of the things I think we have abundant evidence that Americans, and I believe all over the world, people are ready to follow courage.
Yes.
When Robertson, Duck Dynasty, stood up, said his truth, America rose up. A lot of people didn't agree with him, stood behind him and defended him because he said he's got the right to say that. It was remarkable. I think one of the reasons why so many people responded to Trump, he's demonstrating courage. People don't like the way he's saying it. He's edgy, he's offensive, he's sometimes rude, but courage is trumping all the other shortfalls. The man has courage. He's a leader. He'll stand out. And the very first group that gets thrown into the lake of fire in the book of Revelation are the cowardly.
Right.
They get thrown into the lake of fire before the murderers, adulterers, the sorcerers, all other manner of evil. The cowards go in first because I believe the cowards let all this other stuff happen. We were made watchmen. Right. We were posted. You know what happens in the military if you go to sleep on your watch, especially if you're in a war zone.
Well, people get killed.
Yeah, and sometimes a lot of people get killed. Your whole unit can get wiped out if you sleep on your watch.
Absolutely.
Terrible things can happen. And we have been placed here as watchmen on the walls to be salt and light. And I tell you, all around us, you can see the world crying out for courage. And the Christians should be the most bold and courageous of all on the earth. Look who we serve, one who is above all rule and authority and power and dominion. And that's why, when he laid out all the things that are going to happen in the last days, when they asked him, what are the signs of the end of the age? He tells us everything that we're seeing unfold right now in our right now, it's happening. He gave us 3 things to do. He said, first, look up. No, he said, look up, which see him, who's sitting on the throne, who's above all rule and authority and power and dominion. Who are we serving? And then he says, stand up. Stand up for what you believe. Don't compromise.
Which requires
your
courage.
Which requires courage. Who cannot see him, who we serve, and who we're standing for, and not have courage?
Right.
We're not seeing him. We're not looking up to see him if we don't have courage. If you see him, you will have courage.
Right.
Then stand. Take your stand. Then it says rejoice. Never lose the joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord is your strength.
Right.
We see, he's already written the book. We already see at the end of the book we win. We can't lose. It's an unfair fight.
Yeah.
He's just trying to use this to see who has courage, who loves his truth more than they love their own lives. And that's what he said about his disciples. They don't seek to save their life. If you seek to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you'll lose your life for his sake, you'll lay down your life, take up your cross, you'll pay whatever price it takes to stand for truth, you'll find true life.
Well, stop and think about the great King David. When the entire nation trembled in fear of this great Goliath that stood before him. And that Goliath is standing before America today.
Mm-hmm.
But this ruddy-faced little boy stepped up there and picked up 5 stones. He only needed 1. So you got to assume that he knew God was going to give him victory, but he didn't know exactly how many stones it was going to take.
He also knew Goliath had 4 brothers.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. What's the point? Look at what that single act of courage did.
Yeah.
A single act of courage when all others trembled. You could be the one in your community.
It turns the whole tide.
Changes the whole direction of your community.
That's
if you have courage.
Yeah. And that's what we're here for. Any one of you could be the one that turns the whole battle, the whole thing in these times. Thank you so much for all the courage you showed us over your whole life, and you're still fighting with incredible courage. And pray for this man, for all he's doing. He's still on the front lines. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay. And you don't want to miss the next Prophetic Perspectives.
On TV, online, on the go, and on your iPad. Tune into Prophetic Perspectives with Rick Joyner, always available on MorningStarTV.com.